Welcome, friends, to this time of worship. Welcome to first-time viewers, to relative newcomers to our faith, to long-time members of this congregation. How good it is to gather together virtually across the interweb. I am the Reverend Dr. Kelly Murphy Mason, Senior Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Wellesley Hills, and I extend a warm welcome to everybody watching the broadcast of this Sunday service, either through the UU Wellesley Hills website or our Facebook page. We are very grateful to our remote participants who widen the reach of this beloved community. Whether you are feeling jubilant or heartbroken, frightened or courageous, you belong with us. May all of us find peace in this hour. Whoever you are, wherever you find yourself on your personal journey, whatever the sources of your faith, we are glad to have you with us today as we continue our exploration of the spiritual sources of the Unitarian Universalist faith, with this service honoring the teachings of earth-centered traditions. Welcome, everyone.
Ours be the poems of all times, all things of loveliness and worth, all arts, all ages, and all songs, one life, one beauty on the earth.
Good morning. I am Acting Director of Educational and Family Ministries, Michael Packard. At UU Wellesley Hills, we are celebrating 150 years of gathering in community. For generations, we have acknowledged that revelation is never sealed and empowered ourselves to search for new truths. Please note that for this virtual worship, you can find the order of service on our This Sunday page on our website. Please be sure to follow UU Wellesley Hills on our social media outlets to keep current on our many happenings. Always feel free to post any news you have in our community in our Facebook group share. All weekly events, including our casual chat, tech talk, midweek reflection, musical meditation, all ages activity, bedtime stories, and coffee circle, can be accessed online. You will find the links for all those listed in the monthly calendar on our website. Immediately following this service, we will hold our virtual fellowship hour in Zoom, where Intern Minister Joan DeArtemis will host. Each Sunday, we take a few moments to recognize some of our many volunteers. Today, we want to thank the fine volunteers who work with the Advocacy and Witness Task Force, which is currently co-sponsoring a drive to get out the vote for the 2020 election. Contact Sheila Boyle if you would like to be a part of that initiative. This year, we are building beloved community as part of our 2019-2020 Touchstones project, and in May, our touchstone is Sabbath. Author and pastor Eugene H. Patterson writes, "Sabbath is the time set aside to do nothing so that we can receive everything." What do you receive in Sabbath time? I encourage you to join a monthly Touchstone group if you have not already done so. Note that while in-person programming is suspended through August 30th, all our Touchstone groups will be meeting virtually. Now, we invite all who are watching the broadcast of this worship service on our UU Wellesley Hills Facebook page. Take a moment to announce yourself in our audience and greet one another in this electronic community of ours.
Blessed are the heavens, for they declare the power of creation. Blessed is the earth, our beloved home, for she is a planet of plenitude. Blessed are the waters thereon, for they gave rise to living things. Blessed is the land, for it is the source of life abundant. Blessed is the air we breathe, for it fires us to life and love. Blessed are the beasts of the field, for they are glorious to behold. Blessed are the birds of the air, for they carve a graceful arc in the sky. Blessed are the mountains and the seas and the valleys, for their variety makes rich our habitat. Blessed are the fields of grain, the orchards of fruit, for they give sustenance, asking nothing in return. Blessed are the dwellers on earth, for they cherish the privilege of living upon it. Blessed are they who protect the earth and its creatures, from the plants of the field to the trees of the forest. For their reward shall be harmony with the web of existence. Rejoice and be glad, for the earth and all her people are one. These are the words of the Reverend Richard Gilbert. Let us worship together. The flaming chalice is a shining symbol of our Unitarian Universalist commitments. The words for our chalice lighting are spoken in unison. If you have a chalice at home, you may want to light yours now. We light these chalices to illuminate our faithful way forward as an inspirational community of hope. Together, we seek spiritual growth. We strive for just and responsible action. We commit ourselves to leading lives of compassion and purpose. Knowing how we have been blessed, we choose to bless the world.
Good morning. I'm Susie Cartran, the Director of Music at UU Wellesley Hills. I invite you to join me in singing our opening hymn, The Blessings of the Earth and Sky.
Voices of the Great Spirit. It's a tale from Central Australia. In that faraway time, it is said that the Great Spirit in the sky would speak to the people of Earth every day. Early in the morning, when the sun had just risen above the hill, people of Earth would gather under the great gum tree to listen to what the Great Spirit had to say. They heard many things that they could not understand that were hidden from their eyes. Yet the Great Spirit encouraged them to try to understand. And so it went for many years. At last, people grew tired of getting up so early in the morning. They complained, "Why do we get up to listen to a voice of a person we cannot even see?" Others agreed, and they decided, "Let us just enjoy ourselves. We'll eat and drink and dance and sleep as much as we please." The Great Spirit was disappointed by this, but the Great Spirit did not desert them. Instead, a messenger was sent to live among them. When the people met the messenger, they liked him immediately and welcomed him in. They were helped by much of what the messenger had taught them, and for a time, people of Earth were contented. Eventually, some of them remembered the old times when the Great Spirit used to speak to them directly. And they went to ask the messenger, "Could you have the Great Spirit speak to us again like you used to?" The messenger replied, "The Great Spirit will never again speak to humans so they could hear." And the people of Earth were sad and lonesome. They even went to where their dead were buried and tried to talk to those spirits. Alas, they too were silent, and the people were more sad and lonesome. Finally, they, in desperation, appealed to the messenger. "Please, will you have the Great Spirit speak to us again? We need it." The messenger reminded them, "The Great Spirit will no longer speak, but there will be a sign sent. Go to the great gum tree, this time in the middle of the night, and wait for the sign." The people all gathered, and they waited and waited in the dark. They grew restless. What could the sign be, and when will it come? Suddenly, a flash of light came from the sky and shot a fireball down to the great gum tree, splitting it wide open. And then as soon as the fireball came down, it flashed back up into the sky. The gum tree came together as if nothing had happened. Well, the people were surprised and frightened. What did this all mean? The Great Spirit would not talk to them, and the messenger was gone. They looked up to the stars, the man in the Milky Way, and said, "Please tell us what to do." The man replied, "Know that the tongue of the Great Spirit is in everything. The voice of the Great Spirit will now be heard in every sound that you hear. Listen for it. The Great Spirit will speak, but it will be differently than before. Try to understand." There was a great silence. The people listened. They heard the wind blow through the branches of the great gum tree. They wondered, and they tried to understand. And to this day, some people in Central Australia will tell you that the tongue of the Great Spirit speaks in the lightning and in the wind that blows through the trees. It speaks in the thunder and the sounds of the birds. The little spirits are in everything, in the flowers, in the grass, in the rocks, and the birds. Everything that humans can see and hear, feel and smell. And people will tell you, "Speak to the Great Spirit. You will not hear an answer, but know that the little spirits, at least one little spirit, will be there listening."
Each Sunday, this congregation collects a weekly offering as part of its larger spiritual practice of generosity. This morning, UU Wellesley Hills will be collecting donations to support our partner church in Transylvania. There, Reverend Martone receives a modest compensation of roughly $6,000 per year to serve his large but low-income congregation in Trochko. Like other UU congregations in the US, we commit to supplementing the salary of our partner church minister to ensure a living wage. Almost all of the $1,000 we sent last year went to repair the minister's car, without which he would have been a prisoner of the valley, as he said, in their remote mountain village. During the weeks that we have virtual worship, donations will be taken electronically. Visit our website and go to the online giving page. That will allow you to make payments using Breeze. Once there, be sure to select plate collection from the drop-down menu. It takes maybe a couple of minutes at most, so we invite you to donate now. If you choose to mail a check to our church office, be sure to put Partner Church Minister on the memo line. Please be as generous as you can in your support of the Partner Church this Sunday. Let us unite our hearts in prayer, giving voice to the words of the Reverend Maureen Killoran. As the rain has washed our land this season, may we enter into this morning with hearts washed clean of complaints or bitterness. May we begin this morning by releasing the tensions we carry, the strains of those things we cannot abandon, the responsibilities of our lives. As the sun has warmed our lands this season, may we allow the warmth of this community to heal our broken places. May the fog be lifted so that we can see each other clearly. May we rejoice in the blessings of companions who, if we will open ourselves just a little, will truly greet us with compassion and care. As the earth, nourished by rain, brings forth flowers to surround us with beauty, may we too allow our spirits to bloom, even as we acknowledge the complexity of our days. Amen. With these words now in our minds and in our hearts, let us enter into the sacred stillness of a shared silence, listening for the wisdom within. Ours is a spiritual community where we find and forge connection. We trust in the strength of our mutual support, knowing how it has sustained us day after day, year after year. We heed its call to build beloved community. Today, we hold in the light all those whose primary concern is for survival, be it survival through a grave illness or medical procedure or experimental treatment. Concern for the survival of a family farm or small business or especially vulnerable community. Concern for survival through a difficult or even dangerous living situation. Concern for the survival of distant families and friends. And we lift up those who are helping others to survive through this pandemic with emotional support and words of encouragement, with volunteer hours and financial assistance, with medical care and supplies, with grocery shopping and pharmacy delivery, with new programs and policies that recognize the scope of our evolving communal needs. Now we invite you to recall the names of persons or places you are holding in your hearts, either as a source of concern or cause for celebration. If you have candles on hand at home, you may want to light one for our collective joys and another for our collective sorrows. As you feel moved, you may share the names of those persons or places by typing them into our Facebook page. These will then be read aloud next Sunday morning, but will be held in our minds and thoughts, in our hearts and thoughts until then. This morning we name the family and friends of Rick Cresswell, Ann Steinberg, Chris Lilly, Marty and Carmela, Donald Lanui, Robert Peck, Eve Slater, Laura and Frank Pate, Sally and Rick Watts, Emily Senecal Miller, Liz Becker and Ben Unger, Maggie Walsh and the VA staff, Kevin Childress, and millions of other New Yorkers. These names have been heard and honored in this community. Alongside these, we know are certain joys and sorrows that remain private and unspoken this hour. Those too have a rightful place here. May fellow feeling encourage each of us toward ever more compassionate living. Our kindled lamps remind us that we are kindred souls. We are never alone in the human condition. There is a love that cares for all.
Please join me in our meditation on breathing, which we will sing through 3 times. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Our responsive reading this morning is number 604, A Vessel So Sacred.
Those who would take over the earth and shape it to their will, I notice, succeed. Never, I notice, succeed.
The earth is like a vessel so sacred that at the mere approach of the profane, it is marred.
And when they reach out their fingers, it is gone.
For a time in the world, some force themselves ahead and some are left behind.
For a time in the world, some make a great noise, and some are held silent.
For a time in the world, some are puffed fat and some are kept hungry.
For a time in the world, some push aboard, and some are tipped out.
At no time in the world will one who is sane overreach, spend, overwork. Back in March, when such things were more readily done than they are now, I went to my local pet store to purchase a fish. I suspected that the coming quarantine would last a while, and if I were going to be secluded at home, I wanted to be secluded with aquatic life. I decided to buy Asbetes splendens, which some of you might better know as the Siamese fighting fish. These fish prefer solitude and are comfortable in small tanks, which meant that one could fit in our guest bedroom. I chose a gorgeous black orchid male and a small stone lantern for his aquarium. Back at home, I set up his tank and named him Basho. Nowadays, I am glad to report he seems happy as a clam. I named Basho for the famous poet and diarist in 17th century Japan, Matsuo Basho, who not only made the haiku a high art form, but also a kind of sacred scripture. He is best known for the work, a travelogue titled The Narrow Road to the Deep North. I was given a copy of it in my teens by a family friend, and I have kept it with me for all the decades since. The opening lines are legendary in world literature. Days and months are the travelers of eternity. So are the years that pass by. Those who steer a boat across the sea or drive a horse over the earth till they succumb to the weight of years spend every minute of their lives traveling, Basho wrote. I myself have been tempted by a long time for the cloud-moving wind, filled with a strong desire to wander. As strong as his desire to wander was, however, Basho did not do it that often. When he was not out on the road, Basho lived in a tiny hut built for him by students and fans of his poetry. Such was celebrity during the Edo era. Although he had a number of friends he was devoted to, Basho was introverted and introspective. He always had a personal fondness for solitude and spent stretches of his life in almost total seclusion. He had a marked impatience with, and at times vocal disdain for, social niceties. His frank disposition prompted him to banish those whom he feared would waste his time. He preferred to keep company with his own experiences and spent a great deal of time either recollecting his past travels or anticipating his future ones. He may have liked remembering bygone wayfarers more than he enjoyed getting actual visitors. Basho felt most at home on his sojourns. The gods seemed to have possessed my soul and turned it inside out, and the roadside images seemed to invite me from every corner, he confessed, so that it is impossible for me to stay idle at home. Of course, home was generally the safest place for him to be. He suffered from poor health, increasingly so as his age became advanced, and the open road then was dangerous for anyone at any age. Supply lines and sheltering abodes could never be guaranteed, even in the gentlest seasons. The terrain itself was treacherous, irregularly trafficked, and sometimes beset by thieves. In addition, traveling real distances required making careful arrangements and covering unexpected expenses. But Basho considered the trouble and the risk well worth it. On the road, in the open air, at the margins of civilization, surrounded by nature, passing people by, Basho came alive as his senses stirred. The flora and fauna were both beloved traveling companions of his. Basho wrote, "The chestnut by the eaves in magnificent bloom passes unnoticed by men of the world." It was clear that he wanted to be a different kind of person. It was clear, too, that he wanted to inhabit a different kind of world. What kind of persons do we want to be? And what kind of world do we want to inhabit? Throughout this church year, I have been preaching a sermon series on the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism and the 6 sources it draws from most especially. The last of these 6 is the spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Of all the spiritual sources we catalog, this final one is the one that remains at too far a remove from most of us these days. Those of us in developed countries struggle mightily to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature and within a sacred circle of life that includes other animals and plant life too. So much of our existence is unnatural. It is engineered for productivity and efficiency and often artificial, meaning we see only the false front of it, not the ugly underbelly. One of the many large-scale celebrations that was canceled in the midst of the coronavirus closures was Earth Day. Earth Day 2020 fell on April 22nd in the midst of a pandemic, so it mattered little that it was the 50th anniversary of its beginning. What made this past Earth Day notable was how our global health crisis proved itself oddly good for the environment. Perhaps you saw those news photos of lions in Africa stretched across the middle of public roadways, lounging comfortably in the sun. While the majority of humanity lives under tremendous stress, this horrible viral outbreak has relieved some of the worst stresses on wildlife and the natural world. Our enforced seclusion has meant that animals can come out of their hiding, spared the regular ravages of us. our atmosphere has cleared as an unprecedented decline in carbon emissions has been reported around the globe. Stay-at-home orders worldwide, in addition to curling contagion, appear beneficial to the biosphere as a whole. Sadly, the burdens of this pandemic, like all costs, will be distributed unequally. We see this in America, where income inequality has tragic consequences for the disadvantaged who cannot take time away from work. Affluent Americans can afford to stay inside and healthy. Others cannot. On a global scale, we see that trend magnified and multiplied. Those in poor countries with developing economies cannot sustain work stoppages and production shutdowns for too long. Besides, there are many places where decent and affordable housing is so scarce and population density so great that social distancing is only aspirational. How can we begin to account for that unfortunate reality? Indian novelist Arundhati Roy framed this stark situation for her readers in the thought-provoking opinion piece she recently published in the Financial Times. In her piece, "The Pandemic is a Portal," Roy contended, "The COVID crisis is still to come. What is this thing that has happened to us? It's a virus, yes. In and of itself, it holds no moral brief, but it is definitely more than a virus," she concluded. Whatever it is, the coronavirus has made the mighty meal and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past, and refusing to acknowledge the rupture, she noted. But the rupture exists. We dare not deny that. If globalization depends on an extractive and exploitative economy to succeed, perhaps it needs to fail. This interruption just might be a gift. Roy added that in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different, Roy explained. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice, our avarice, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through it lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world. Just imagine that. The poet Basho did. He packed modestly. He repaired his sandals and robe and hat between his sojourns and brought only the bare necessities and scant funds for each trip. He trusted his human instinct for survival and believed in his potential for ingenuity. He made a study of his environs and the creatures who populated them. Watching a pair of osprey nest on a rock inspired this question in the poet: what divine instinct has taught these birds no waves swell so high as to swamp their homes? Well-versed as he was in the literature of his time, Basho was also religiously informed by insights from Zen Buddhism, by the Shintoism native to Japan, and by the Taoist tradition that taught him to take life lessons from nature. Those who would take over the earth and shape it to their will never, I noticed, succeed. The earth is like a vessel so sacred that at the mere approach of the profane it is marred, and when they reach out their fingers, it is gone, the great sage Lao Tse declared. For a time in the world, some push aboard and others are tipped out. At no time in the world will one who is sane overreach, overspend, overrate. For too long, we moderns have jeopardized both our sanity and our planet. We have overreached our habitations and overspent our resources and overrated our own needs. Now we need to think of our collective mental health in addition to our collective medical health. This pandemic prescribes stillness. How do you fill yours? During these days of extended closures, when we all remain such solitary creatures, we can give serious consideration to how we want to live when we re-emerge from quarantine. We can use this period of suspended animation to expand our own consciousness. Even a severely constrained life holds both richness and depth. Wisely spent, it can allow us to tap our inner resources and develop our reflective capacities and become more intimate with our own existence. Like Basho, we can mind the time more and mind it less as travelers of eternity. We can become sincere pilgrims through these difficult days, weeks, months. We can become intentional about planning how we want to move through this world when we step back out into it again. Will we find a pace in harmony with the rhythms of nature, or tear through it at the breakneck pace all too familiar to us? We see now that our breakneck pace can be deadly in so many ways. After travel bans lift, we may still want to limit our intercontinental and cross-continental travel, nevertheless. After food production resumes full force, we may want to limit or eliminate our meat consumption. We may want to stay off the interstate and work from home a few days each week. If our entire economy needs to be rebuilt, perhaps a Green New Deal is the thing to do that and to pave the way to a more sustainable future. It's not too late for us to locate ourselves within the sacred circle of life, as so many spiritual teachings throughout the ages have encouraged us to do. So maybe our Earth Day was not canceled this year after all. Maybe it was extended instead. Recently, a dear friend of mine, a retired Unitarian Universalist minister and the child of foreign missionaries, mailed me a Happy Crisis card. It contained the now famous Chinese ideogram that depicts crisis as a combination of danger and opportunity. My hope is that we take the opportunities of this time just as seriously as we take its dangers. Between alarmism and fatalism might lie our preferred option, enlightened opportunism. We can pass through that portal that pandemic opened, thoroughly transformed, if we consciously choose new life. When I bought my fish, the clerk at my local pet store told me that a lot of people were shopping there then and bringing home creature companions for the quarantine. Apparently, animal shelters around the country have seen an uptick in adoptions. We humans are hardwired for biophilia, for a love of all life forms, and under duress, perhaps we feel it most strongly. I have become very fond of Basho the fish since March, and in a bizarre instance of life imitating art, I sometimes read him haikus written by his namesake, Basho the poet. He seems to like the poetry. He stops swimming, I swear, and listens, his long fins fluttering in the water. It's a beautiful sight to behold. Basho the fish, like Basho the poet, is showing me how to inhabit life more fully than I knew possible. So I am taking note of that now.
Please join me in our closing hymn, Where My Free Spirit Onward Leads.
worship is concluding, we extinguish our individual chalices. Our closing words are spoken in unison. Extinguishing this flame, which has burned bright in our midst, we revere what has been kindled within each one of us, warmth in community, the light of truth, a perpetual spark of hope. Knowing abundant blessing, we choose to bless the world. May the quality of each of our lives be our benediction and a blessing to all we touch. Those who take hold of life, may you find life returning your embrace. Those who sense God, may you find God always with you. Those who seek the right path, may the way appear ahead. Step out in faith and go in peace, remembering that you are well loved and we are all one. So it is, so may it always be.